All right, yeah, it's recording. Good morning, good evening, everyone. This is December the 13th, and this is the weekly SIG Release meeting. My name is Adolfo, and I'm going to be your host today. I see we have a light agenda, I think, for today. But well, if someone can help taking notes, it's always really welcome and appreciated. And we'll start by giving new members any chance, their chance to say hello. If you want to say hi and you want to tell us what your interest is in SIG Release, you're more than welcome to do so. All right. So no worries. Just we want to know that you are welcome here, and if at any time you want to pop in and say hi, we're more than welcome to give you space and hear what you have to say. All right, so let's turn to some of the sub-project updates. Anybody would like to give an update on release engineering?
I can give it a try, unless there's someone else who wants. But yeah, so let's start with the releases. Last week, we first of all had 1.26.0, and while we had some issues, and it had been delayed from Thursday to Friday, 1.26.0 is finally here. It is working and everything is fine. Shout out to the team that worked on it. We ran into some serious issues that we had a conflict with the fast forwarding job that caused some later issues in the release step, because for instance, fast forward moved some commits since we had patch releases on the same day, and that caused issues later on because there were new commits on 1.26 the starting stage, and then it failed to push when doing release. There is some, I can show you to Zoom chat, a message that Sasha sent out today. Thanks for that, for some more details, and huge thanks to folks who actually took care of this and managed to unblock those release. And yeah, pretty good job. Thank you. This is for 1.26.0. We also had patch releases, 1.22.17, 1.23.15, I think, 1.24.9, and 1.25.5. Those patch releases went mostly successfully. We ran into some issues, for instance, like some flakes in the release that made us to have to retrigger stage or release. We created issues at GitHub for this, and we will try to triage this and to actually fix those issues, hopefully before the next release, so that we avoid those flakes. Other than that, I don't think that we had major problems. Those releases went well. They also included the Go updates for 1.90.4 and 1.80.9. That also went fine. So I think from that side, we are good to go. When I mentioned it already, Go updates, Go 1.20.0 RC1 is available. I see that Carlos picked it up, so I guess we will soon start incorporating it on master of Kubernetes. So let's see how is it going to work. Let me see, do we have anything else? For the OBS work, Open Build service, I sadly didn't have much time to finish the cap, but this is something that I am planning to do this week, and let's hopefully be able that I will be able to finish everything and that we can start discussing it there. So yeah.
Thank you. So I wanted to, sorry, Marco, did you have more?
No, back to you, folks.
Okay. So yes, Marco, thank you for the update. And thank you to everyone on release engineering for diving in. There's a lot of interesting problems to solve over the last few releases. So I want to do some quick process things just for the release managers. So I think the first is work-life balance. I'll do the work-life balance thing first. We have a global team. I want people to keep that in mind as we're kind of running through the anytime we're doing releases, and we know it's kind of a, depending on what's going on in the day, it's a essentially a follow the sun situation, right? So recognize that you're on a global team. If you need to hand something off, that is completely fine. That is why the team is staffed this way. Recognize those problems early, or the time constraints early. Communicate that to the team, and then we pick it up from there. No one should be, hey, it's 1 a.m. my time, and I think I've got to go to bed or something like that. Like we should be stopping well before that point, right? If we have issues with releases, the first thing that we want to do is identify if it is an issue that is going to stop the release for that day, right? First and foremost, right? Communicate with the team, figure out if it's going to be a release stoppage, and then communicate with the community, right? That key piece of knowing that a delay is happening and communicating that early is first and foremost, right? We're doing a good job of it. I just want to reinforce that, because once that's done, once you've done the work of communicating that, we can go back to planning whatever we have to do. If there's something broken in release SDK or utils, and we've got to cut a new release and then do this and jump over to Kpromo and do that and cut a new release of this and then integrate it into the system and rerun a stage, and it's going to take 2 days. At least we have communicated to the community that there will be a delay in the release, right? Release dates are optimistic. We're an open source community. We all have full-time jobs, work, school, family, et cetera, et cetera. We will always try our best to make releases on the dates that we specify in the timeline. We should not feel like it's a failure if we don't. Okay. So around this cycle in particular, a few things that Marco kind of already touched on. The first, and we should kick around ideas on this. The first is the fast forwarder. I believe we've already got an issue filed about making sure that the fast forwarder is shut off around the time that we're getting ready to release, right? So RC0 is cutting the new branch, and somewhere between RC0 and official, we're continuing to fast forward content. We need a stopping time to turn off the fast forwarder, right? So that conversation is already happening. That's one. When patch releases and official releases or GA releases are happening in quick succession, I think that we should prioritize the GA release. If it means a delay in the patch release, I think I'm okay with that. But as a result of the issues with the fast forwarder, as well as the patch releases happening, we effectively blocked a GA release for patches this time around. I don't think we should be doing that. So I will toss that one out to the group for discussion. But if we slip on a patch a few days, I think that's fine. If we slip on an official release, I'm a bit more concerned.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. Well, from what I read this morning, I think the issue with the fast forward is done. From what I gather from Sasha's message. But yeah, absolutely. So I feel we still have a little bit of a gap between the time the Americas crew needs to go to bed and the folks in the EU start, and that sometimes causes us to drag a little bit longer. But yeah, definitely. I feel that we've been really good at handing off problems so far. Sometimes emergencies happen, like with the last release, but I feel that we're doing a really good job. I mean, especially for the ongoing release management work, I feel that work-life balance has been improving a lot, and I'm really grateful that for having for feeling my back supported by people in other latitudes. And what I also wanted to add to what Stephen just said is that this was like a great thing to see happening. I mean, it was unfortunate that we hit a snag during the release, but I think it was a great experience seeing how the fast forwarder came into play during this release, saving a bunch of people a lot of work during the last leg of the release, the branch managers. And yeah, I mean, sometimes unexpected things happen, but seeing the team respond and making things work to ensure that in the future we have this great automation in place is an example of great teamwork.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think, you know, there's one kind of like meta issue happening that we should look at. And I mean, it's hard to qualify all of the pieces, but it's around timing. There are certain things that we have added to the process or changed in certain processes that cause things to take longer. And as a result, we're seeing occasionally when those things bump up against each other, right? So the fast forwarder running into the deadlines of or running into the release cycle of the patch releases, or the fact that we've added more regions to replicate images to, which raises the time that the image promotion takes, right? Builds and promotions take. The changing the promotion time also can trigger a conflict between the post submits for the promotion jobs and the periodic for the promotion jobs. So we're starting to see some like interesting issues pop up around timing. So I would ask that the team just like keep an eye on like how long we think things are going to take. I think it's really easy to turn things on. It's much harder to turn them off. So if we are and again, we're shipping artifacts for, you know, the largest open source Golang project, you know, on GitHub, right? So so when we have to turn things off, there is going to be an impact, right? Or if we have to change things mid-flight, there's going to be an impact. So I would just ask us to continue considering, not saying we're not doing it right now, but continue considering the time that it takes and the coordination that it takes for certain processes to happen. Jeremy?
Yeah, and I think this one was just a confluence of stuff coming together too, because the patch releases originally weren't supposed to overlap with the release. We moved them up a week because it was going to be the end of the year and people are going to be going on vacation and availability. And then the Go thing happened. So we delayed them a little bit. And then I think it just everything kind of smooshed together, and the increased time that it takes for some of those things just exacerbated it a little bit. So I think considering how long it takes for some of those things, I think we should be a little bit more intentional about when things are going to making sure that we don't get into a situation where we're intentionally stacking like 5 releases in a day.
Yeah, that was awesome to see. I mean, it's not anybody's intention to get 5 releases at the same time, but the fact that we can do it, I think, speaks a lot to the great work that has been going on for the last years.
Oh yeah, for sure. It'll just be easier on everybody if we don't do 5 at the same time.
Awesome. Anyone has any questions anything to add to that?
I guess I would just add one question, because, you know, like I was just catching up probably a couple of weeks ago with like some of the changes and with when the Go CVE dropped. But, you know, like, it's always a challenge with CVEs, because we know we're always going to get some things dropped. So what is our criteria to deviate from our schedule, which then caused like a really compressed amount of activities in a shorter period of time, meaning the release, we have these patch cuts. Like, how do we, you know, does every CVE force us to change our schedule? Or does it, you know, like, because that's where it kind of felt like if we would have kept our cadence, you know, yes, we know we still got to get that CVE in, you know, and you look downstream who our consumers are, like, I don't think any of them are, there's not many that are drinking from the fire hose, you know, getting that CVE. Like if they got that patched in or in another couple of weeks, I can tell you it's a wild west out there, depending on what organization you're in when you take in CVE. So I'm just kind of curious, like, what is the criteria for us to say, hey, we're going to change our schedule?
So one, I would ask you to you've volunteered yourself now. I would ask you to file an issue to discuss this in more detail. But I mean, the short list is the things that will block a release, right? A large feature being incomplete, a regression in an existing API that may need to be fixed, critical test failures, release engineering tooling breakages. Those are some high level, and as well as security vulnerabilities, right? Those are some super high level ones. On security, we're tapping into, so we have a separate channel for like the security release team, which is basically the aggregate of the fully fledged release managers as well as the security response committee, right? When things are coming to the forefront that will affect release timelines, or are there things that are hitting Kubernetes and may require action on the release manager side, we usually tap in there and try to figure out like what would be a justification for, even let's think about like out of band releases, right? There's something that has come out that is so critical that we need to fix it now. And I think that, in part of kind of your vulnerability assessment, you're also doing what's the likelihood that this issue is going to impact people based on the way something is implemented, right? If there is a, Go will, the Go security engineers will also they'll give us a bit of a highlight on, either on the mailing list or out of band on the criticality of something, right? If it is a minor security fix, they will pre-announce that it will be a minor and roughly the timeline. If it is something more critical, they might reach out to a few people off list for that. Something else around the Go updates in general, because we are again, this is a fun timing thing, right? So initially we were releasing, in the past 2019 or so, right? We were doing 4 releases for the year, right? Condensing, or extending the release schedule and condensing the amount of releases for the year means, we roughly know what Go's release cadence is, right? We have to overlay that with our release cadence and think about, so usually for Go releases, part of the reason that, the 120 RC1 is out right now, and we're already starting to pick it up. The reason is that we're kind of always racing the clock against a Go release, right? If we don't want to have major Go changes. So Go's, semantic versioning wise, you kind of shift right a bit for the Go releases, right? So their major releases are on the 19, 20, et cetera, right? When a major release drops, we tend to, there needs to be a really good reason for us to change the Go major version within a release branch, right? Which is why we try to make sure that we are current on the release branch, because we essentially have to maintain that release branch for the year and change within the support period, right? So if we miss that window, that means that there's potentially a release branch out there that is missing security updates, missing functionality that we won't be able to take in until the next release.
Thanks for that breakdown. That makes a lot of sense. It just sounds like, like maybe one of the learnings is just kind of like if outside of like this release, like we always have swim lanes because there's unplanned work when you're in these OPSI worlds, and you're also trying to release. And it sounds like that's kind of what we hit here with, and then the compressed timeline at the end of the year.
Yeah, for sure. I think the the end of the year is a tricky one too, and I think we're still kind of calibrating on timing to end the releases, or timing to, I guess, maybe like cut the first one of the year or start the cycle, right? Because every now you have optimizations in between schedule, but because we have fewer releases for the year, we have less opportunities for those optimizations. So if we so starting too late, or starting too early, ending too late, what have you, it can affect even the next year, right?
All right, I think I'm gonna time box this a little bit because we have still a few items to go through. So unless there's anything pressing, I think we should go to the release team update. Or yeah, I don't know, Leo, if you want to say something, or we just jump directly to James' topic.
I can give some updates.
All right.
So as we all know, we released on Friday 1.26. Was quite late in the evening on a Friday, maybe not so optimal, but we made it. It took quite some time for us to get docs ready. It was a little bit surprising to me that it was kind of not challenging, but it took a lot of effort. Maybe we also made like some small mistakes, but we powered through together with Nate and Tim Bannister and Tyler. So we took a lot of notes and want to improve also the handbook. So in the future, that the docs lead can take those tasks a little more easily, hopefully. Right. So comms is also out. We wrote a few emails and dropped in general like some comms. Today is the first retro. Thanks to Jeremy and James for hosting that and writing the notes. We also have another retro for tomorrow, but it's unsure if we need it, depending on the discussion items today. Maybe we will cancel it or not. And we have one last thing to do, or one of the last things is to write the exception request YAML file. So usually we have also like a file in the release about the exception requests, and we need to update that, but this should not be an issue. And about 1.27, we are discussing with Xander, James, and Abarun a lot of things about the Shiro application form and on and so forth. So this is also on its way. That's it.
All right. Thank you, Leo. And thank you for all the great work during the 126 cycle, and to the whole of the release team. All right. So I think we need to rush it a little bit to our open discussion topics. And the first one is from James.
Hello. I just want to talk very briefly about 127. As mentioned, we're starting to have discussions around the shadow survey for that. The current intention is that we're not putting out the survey until after the second part of the retro, which is this afternoon. So we can fold in any retro items that affect the shadow survey from that, and then hopefully we'll be able to get it out tomorrow, probably tomorrow or Thursday, hopefully, and then leave it open probably until early January, maybe a week or so before we're supposed to start. We're still figuring out the exact timelines, talking to Xander, Leo, and Nabarud about that. But yeah, it is coming along nicely. In terms of the role things, I'm going to steal Nabarud's thunder and talk about this. I believe we have role nominations for everyone other than Docs and CI Signal, and we are working on those too. There are people in mind and people have been spoken to. So it is being worked on. That's it for me. That's for any questions.
Thank you, everyone. Again, to echo Adolfo, thank you to the 126 release team. Thank you to the 127 leads for stepping up and getting things into gear. We have some discussion to do amongst the leads around the around selections for well, one release management in general, but selections for the branch manager shadows for 127. You may have noticed, and the cleanup is not complete, but I kind of opened a PR and K release just to have a discussion with the release manager associates, folks that were interested in continuing or not continuing, and started to do some pruning of that list. We need to effectively rework some of that associate program to kind of encourage people through the ladder. So that is something that's active. We're still kind of knocking around ideas there, and there's an open PR on the process that is overdue for an update, is the short version. But stay tuned for that. I hope that, I think we can close that discussion out by end of year, or next 2 weeks or something like that. Related to that, if there are people who have served on the release team in the past or have been working in SIG Release for a while and have interest in becoming a release manager associate, please let us know. You can reach out to one of the SIG Release leads via DM, and we'll chat about it a bit just to gauge interest. Ideally, moving forward, that process will be a bit more clear about how to move through that. But we do have some work to do on the documentation first. And yes, to Marco's point, that is the PR that I'm referring to. That first commit just describes the process as is. And then I'll start layering some commits on top of that describe what we want going forward. But there is some discussion there already, and feel free to chime in if you have opinions.
Awesome. Great. So any additions to the next cycle?
I've got one thing to add. Just real quick, I have the PR open on the SIG Release repo to add the 127 release docs. And with that, there's a whole timeline breakdown plan. Would love for folks to just take a look at that if you've got the bandwidth, and just let me know your thoughts on the proposed timeline. And if you see any red flags there currently, we would typically kick off around 2 weeks after the last release, which puts us January 2nd, which I don't want to do. So I've kicked that to January 9th to start the release, which also has us concluding the week before KubeCon EU. So yeah, feel free to go take a look, add any comments, and yeah, appreciate it.
Great. If you can send a link, the PR in the agenda, so that people following later can check it out.
I sent it in chat if that's the correct one.
Okay, thank you, Mark. All right. Any other questions about selections of the release team and branch managers? All right. Let's move to the next one from Arno about consensus on tag publishing.
Yes. I think two weeks ago, I came up with a conversation about pushing images to the duplicate registry. So now I think I would like to see consensus around that for next year. Basically decide what we need to do about pushing images to GCR or artifact registry.
Yeah, so to give a little bit more of context around that one. So some of the discussions around the registry domain name change and changing of the default registry were around when is the proper time to stop pushing new tags to the older GCR backed registries. And the discussions around that happened during KubeCon suggested that we should try to take the opportunity of 126 to stop publishing those. So I think the feeling was that since we already deprecated the old registry, by switching the name back in 125. We're fine to move, but 126 was like a good breaking point to stop pushing the tags. In order to do this, we need to have a couple of infra things working. So the first one is around having a, well, not private in the sense that it's not accessible, but not published GCR mirror, which we need to use to replicate to push compatibility. I mean, we can go into the implementation details later, but we need to have like one last private GCR registry, and then we would keep pushing the branches under maintenance to the older registry as they go off maintenance, and then once they are EOL'd, the registry would sort of shut itself down as it would get no new updates. But the new tags for 126 and future releases, including 125, which was kind of the controversial one, would no longer be pushed to GCR. And we already have the backports, and we've tried to do some communication around the registry change. But well, if you see the issue, now we're past 126, and other things can happen that, well, didn't make that possible. But well, we need to have the discussion on when to do the actual sunset of the old registries.
We also need a communication plan for this. Given that we are already in, we're past 126 at this point, we need to make sure that we give people plenty of leeway to understand how this change is happening. I think that some of the posts that we've put up recently are kind of a step in the direction. Just making sure that we have a plan in place, just on comms as well as the technical components.
Arno?
Yeah, just to be clear, we don't really sunset the duplicate registry. Case.gcr.io will still be running for a while, because GCR is duplicate, but it's not going anywhere for the next, I think, 2 to 3 years. What we basically want to do is stop newer tag for Kubernetes and the sub-project to be pushed to basically GCR. That's what we want to do. So if anyone want to basically pull anything before December 2022, they can pull those images, the old one, because we are not changing anything. But because it's duplicate, the idea is to make sure we push exclusively to Artifact registry and save from that. And the patch releases or last we made sure in the future, if we'll basically cut new patch releases, we will push from registry.gates.io. So I agree with Stephen. Like, I would like to basically start doing that in 120, basically made the communication. So we start doing that in 128. And we have like one milestone to make sure we have communicate well to the community and implement everything needed to stop pushing to GCR. So that's why I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's about consensus on how I think the most important thing is like communication, make sure everyone, and I say everyone, basically people watching the news of Kubernetes know we're doing this, and we can distribute that information everywhere. Like we can even start doing this communication now and do the implementation from 128.
So you are proposing sunsetting the pushing of new tags by 128, not 127 or now?
Yeah, because we end of the year, and when we go back we'll start the new milestone. I don't think there's basically next week is gonna be tricky to get people working on something.
Yeah, I'd agree.
So I'm fine with basically. I would like basically we start make the communication now that we announce like at least 3 months from now. Basically say, oh, 128 is basically 127 is the last release when we push to 2 service for content repository.
And by 127, we still have one release, 120, which would be 124. We still need to push that to GCR, but that would be the only images getting pushed. Once 124 gets sealed, then no more pushes to GCR.
Yeah, because like the latex patches release have now the new registry. So next milestone was next month. For the patch release, we still use the old one. But in 128, we basically say because we spend 3 months. I hope we spend 3 months communicate everywhere, TikTok, YouTube, whatever, to say, oh, we have a new registry. We be announced that for months now. It is time now to we cut using that and the duplicate one.
I'm really excited to see your TikTok announcements event. It has music and everything.
I was gonna say, do we have
I was like, is there a dance? Will there be a dance? Should we make a dance?
Maybe, I don't know. We can go in, force them, keep going, whatever, do a dance and make the announcement. I don't really care. So I think that's the idea. Like, make sure we communicate well about basically we stop pushing the tags. The old one will still be there, but we stop pushing the tags to the new one. We do this for specifically. I insist on doing this because GCR costs now more than it used to be, because in October, GCP introduced a new billing about the service we use. So we are kind of impacted. That's why I'm saying I want to cut extra costs for next year, because we take another risk to be out of project next year.
Yeah.
So that's like one of the main reasons.
Yeah, the way I see it, we need to do some changes. So it's unrealistic to hope to have them this year. So we would start building them in January, February, and then this puts us like almost at 127. So 128 makes the most sense. By 128, all of the batch releases that were officially being pushed to GCR are EOL'd, if my math is right. So by the time 128 is out, 124 should be EOL, so that, I mean, just makes things fall naturally into place. But well, yeah, I think we can just punt the discussion to early next year and to start planning the implementation. But yeah, sounds good. I don't know if anybody has any other comments around this topic for Arno. All right. So the next topic. So thank you, Arno. And let's chat early next year. Next one is from Jeremy about the meetings for the rest of the year.
Yeah. Do we want to cancel anything for the rest of the year? Next week would be the 20th, and then the week after that would be the day after. What?
Yeah,
2 days. Like there are going to be like weeks where nobody's around except for me because I'm on call.
Yeah, let's keep next week and then cancel the rest.
Okay, to cancel the 27th.
Yeah. Cancel up until the second week of January. Does that sound good to folks?
Which week in January?
Second
week. Okay, so the 10th.
After the work-life balance pep talk, I'm not gonna object that. Okay. All right, then any other questions about meetings or whatever? I mean, people who for some reason enjoy using their vacations to work on this stuff like me can still communicate async on Slack if they want to, but well. All right, if there isn't anything, the last topic is from Arno about being a branch manager for 127. I think this falls into the early discussion. So please chime in on the discussion there, and well, point noted. So unless there's anything you want to add, Arno, about that.
I would basically want to shadow the branch manager for 127 because I don't know who is going to be the branch manager. Wanted to shadow that person or apply for the role. I don't know what's happening.
Okay, yeah, that was that was what the discussion in the release team update was. So that
okay,
but yeah, noted. All right. Anybody has one 1 minute thing to add before we wrap it up? All right. So, well, thanks everybody for attending our meeting. It's always nice to see old faces, new faces, and thanks again to the release team, and catch you soon on the retro. And
bye everybody.
Later,
Bye,
folks.
everyone.
Bye bye.